Hello ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, my name is OctoMan and this is a tutorial about how to create procedural animations for fish-like characters or fish-like movement or even something similar. And we are going to take a look into some interesting new packages we gonna get within Unity 2K20, and that's where we're going to start right in a minute. So what I also want to let you know about is make sure in the bottom of or in the description down below you can check out all my courses available on Udemy, and of course there are several ones on Skillshare. So if you want to learn specific game development in different specific games, you want to check them out probably over here. Okay, so first off, I created a rather simple fish 3D model over here, which I can, drag into the scene and all the other stuff here as well. It's just my test fish. So before it comes to actual procedural animations or any type of animations, what you need to know is you need to have a bone system running, like bones inside a 3D mesh. Probably there's also a possibility to do this with 2D, but I'm not quite sure since I haven't tested this one out yet. So we are going to only cover 3D fish-like characters. So again, this is just a simple fish. It doesn't have any textures because, well, it's just a test fish in here. So let's take a look. I'm gonna open all my little rig over here. So basically I used a 3ds Max CAD rig over there to take a look into and just simply make that rig possible. So each of these parts of the rig contain a little, let's say, influence on top of this particular mesh. So when I move the head, the complete actual mesh is going to move. If I take the second one, you're gonna see it's going to bend over to the side over here. Then we have the next one is going to be a bit below, and we can, or I can literally do, as you can see, bend the fish in one or the other direction. So as you can tell, if we are going to animate this by hand, this is going to take quite some time, right? Because we need to literally animate, since this is a forward kinematic animation over here, or a forward kinematic rig, literally, we're gonna have to touch each bone every time now and then, and to animate a fish like this one. Let me undo this one pretty quick, and now I want to show you what we can do with procedural animations. We're gonna need to implement some package for that from the Unity package manager. So how does that work, or how will that work, is rather simple. The only thing we are going to animate for procedural animations is the fish head. The far and the low, or the big or small amount of movement we want to do, like we can do a quick one or we can make a slow one. So what we could do is we could create already one animation which is just moving the head left and right on into this one particular mesh, or with this one particular bone literally, and the rest would be there. But let's go and skip that for a moment, since we want to set up like everything we need. So first off, we go to Window and Package Manager. And if you started this one rather new, you only see what is currently in the project. What we want to see is everything which Unity has to provide. And what we want to look at is the animation rigging package, which we want to install. This contains a bunch of nice features and several nice scripts which we can make use of to do some rigging toolkit, as you can see, for animation C# jobs. And that means this will provide literally the library we need for procedural animations. There are a bunch of things we need to take in consideration, or even how we need to set several things up. And I'm gonna show you my way. We're gonna maybe take a look into other ways. But for the moment, let's just download everything and set up everything, so you have the animation rigging package completely downloaded in your project. This may take a second or two, depending on how slow or how fast your internet connection is going to be. Once that has been set up, you can always go and check if there are new ones or updatable ones and so on and so forth. But that's basically it for the moment. What it will add a new tab over here, which is called animation rigging. What we want to do is we want to create a rig, a specific rig for this one test fish, for my test fish in here. So for that one, we're gonna need to implement our own rig first. And this rig needs to sit also on our mesh, so we can create a new rig setup. As you can see over here, it creates automatically. This is like a gizmo for this rig, as well as this particular rig itself. But it doesn't do anything, it doesn't contain anything, it's just what we need to talk to in a bit. So what's now happening is all of these bones do have a specific position in our rig. As you can see, they are like on different positions over here inside. You can see those pivot points over there. If you want to see them even better, you could, for example, choose like a point over here. So you can see each of these bones do have a different position pivot point. What we now want to do is we want to take all these pivot points, or actually all those rigs, create an empty game object. So we have the direction of all of these and the rotation, and then we create those game objects which are literally copying the positions over there, and we add them to the rig. Of course, that takes a second to update, or maybe a minute, depending, or to create, depending on how far or how fast we are. So let's start with that. We're gonna select our first rig. For the moment, I go and disable this little icons, so I'm not getting too much distracted over here. I start with the head, because the head is actually the first bone in my rig. What I do is right click and create an empty. As you can see, this is automatically parented to my head. You can give it a number, you can just give it a name, whatever you please and like. I'm gonna do the same for the rig tail one over there. So just create an empty, give it a number 2. It is important that you keep the order later on, so because the rig itself later on will notify that particular order. Next one is tail 2. We just create a new empty, which is going to be number 3. Then, well, actually, maybe it is even better to name this one as 0, since the head, as you can see, has no number in the background. But we will still see how that is going to be connected later on. Well, that's what I actually guess and hope. So now we have the head, we have the tail 1, tail 2. Now we're going to take the tail 3, create an empty, just name it 4. And then we have the number 5 over there. Oh, actually, the number 4 is going to be this one first. Create a number 5 in this case, and the last one is going to be number 6, like that. So now we do have all the bones, or actually a copy of the direction, because we were creating them so that they are child objects of the corresponding objects. That means they copy the complete orientation and position of the actual bone position and orientation, or rotation, you name it. So I believe it's better to maybe rename this ones pretty quick. So gonna quickly rename them to be in the correct order. For me, it's a bit better, so I take the head as an extra. Rename by pressing F2, going to make it a bit faster, and then just go and pass by over here. Now I take the head and make this one part of the rig. Now I take number 1, make it part of the rig, take number 2, take number 3, just drag it on top of the rig itself, like so. Now we do have the order of the rig. So we do have the rig itself with the rig script, and we have like all of these positions. As you can see, they have the number, they have the position, and probably also the rotation. We can check them here if you want to, but I don't need. We actually don't need that, since, as you can see, there are these numbers just copied directly all over there. So this is now our procedure rig, I would say. So each of these things over here, they all need to have a component, and this is a specific component only from rigging or for animation rigging. In our case, we gonna have to, and I believe that's the correct one, should be a damped transform. We cannot multi-edit damped transforms, but we're gonna have the possibility to go top to bottom or bottom to top, depending on how you want to structure that. They do have a weight, they do have a constraint object, and they do have a source object, as well as some dampening settings. We don't touch the dampening settings at the moment, but let's take a look into the constraint object as well as the source. So how does that work? I'm not quite sure, by the way, if we need the head actually, because there's no source for the head itself, because we are animating the head itself, so probably we don't need that at this point. So let's skip the head for the moment and let's take the bone number 1. Same here, so we have a constraint object as well as the source object. So what is the source object? The source object is the object which is doing the initial move to move this one bone. So in that case, the source object is going to be the rig of my head, or the head bone in this case. So I can drag this one into the source for bone 1. Who is the actual constraint object is the actual tail number 1. So this number 1 contains this number 1 over here. So same for number 2. Number 2's source object is tail number 1, and the constraint object is going to be tail number 2. Number 3, in this case bone number 3, or the tail piece number 3, is going to have the source of tail 2 and is constraining to the tail number 3. Number 4, same procedure, is looking at number 3, so the source object is number 3, but it is constrained to number 4. And the final one we do have is number 5. It is actually looking at the tail number 4 as being the source, and the cat rig tail number 5 is the actual constraint object. So now that should be literally everything we need to set up, except if it later on comes to dampen and like rotation and dampen positions over here. We're going to take a look into those in a moment. So as you can see, we are looking with number 1 into the head area. So since we haven't done anything yet to the head, we probably don't really need this piece over there. So it doesn't really matter at all. In the worst case scenario, we just get rid of the head game object over here, because again, this is not necessary. Now what I want you to do is, if you have created one already, you're gonna take your test fish, or in this case probably the head itself, but I guess we just move the head or the test fish itself, and I'm gonna go, once it is done calculating some things, you can see the rig 1 is going to be connected to test fish. If that is not the case, you need to add the component rig builder, and as you can also see, it contains automatically an animator component, which means we can animate things like the head itself or the fish itself if we want to. And then the rig, which means we can build in multiple rigs for multiple different scenarios as an example, and put them into the rig layers over here. So what will happen if we are moving the fish now to the left? Take a look at the tail. The tail is wiggling or swimming literally automatically. I disable gizmo so you can see that better. I only rotate the fish itself, but the tail of the fish is moving all on its own. Now you can tell if you're animating this fish just by this position or the rotation itself and moving it at the same time forward, you can see this is going to dampen the fish pretty nicely. There's a little bug in my rig here, but that is not too heavy at all. I'm gonna pause, or actually don't do play anymore, and what I can now do is I can do this one actual animation over here for the fish itself, and can animate that and move the fish in any direction if you want to, but keep on doing or repeating the actual head or the actual fish animation. I'm gonna test this out once again, only with the head, so not touching the fish, but touching the head itself and trying to animate this. As you can see, this is doing actually the same thing. So we can animate the rig itself without touching that fish, but at the same time, the fish is doing its movement, which is absolutely fantastic. So we can also do, without actually, just rotating things, we can also move things up and down. So I'm gonna go to move right now, and we move them guy up, and we can also do downwards movement. As you can see, the fish is automatically updating its tail. As you can also see, depending on how fast I do this or how slow that I do this, it can wiggle a bit. So for that anti-wiggling, I would say, you're gonna have these dampeners later on. So you can dampen out the movement in between those tail areas. So you can make it a bit more or a bit less. Currently, all the settings over here are going to be in the middle. So we can damp position, and we can also damp rotation. Now let's move that one fish. As an example, if you're using a NavMesh agent, it is absolutely phenomenal how this is going to look whenever you use a NavMesh to move along just with that fish using the NavMesh system. Also, you can just, randomize the position of the fish, like fly up, fly down, or move along a path, and the rest is done automatically. We don't cover, or I don't cover anything of that yet, but or in this particular tutorial over here, because I only wanted to show you how procedural animations are going to work for fish-like characters. So the final one is, since we have an animator component on this particular fish, what we can do is we can just take the actual head. We keep the forward axis of the fish, so whenever we move the fish forward, nothing is going to affect the actual head wiggle. So let's take a look. First off, we go into window animation, and we can create a new one. Just make sure that you're going to select the head rig tile, or the head rig, or the head of the actual rig itself. I'm gonna save that animation as doing swim, or slow swim animation. Just create that, and now we can add properties to this animation. You don't have to be an animator for that, because that is a rather simple process. Depending on how fast you want to animate this one, you can just say, okay, I want to do rotation. I want to do a record over here, and let's assume it takes the fish half a second, for example, to rotate the head about maybe 15 to 20 degrees to one or the other direction. Let's try one. So in that case, I have used something like 10 to 15 degrees over here. I can now go for testing this one out. As you can see, even in scene, you can see, meanwhile, playing this animation, the tail already works with it, even without being in the play mode. So we move to that position. Then we can do, okay, we're gonna move back to where we come from. So I can copy this by pressing Ctrl+C. On the Mac it's probably Command+C, and then I put the back, or copy that onto the position where the time slider is. So I do a movement from middle to right, middle, and basically what I now need to do is I do the opposite direction, or the opposite rotation over here. So let me flatten this little number over here to be a 105 in total, so I know what the opposite has to be. So what does that mean again? I can now wiggle or rotate the fish head into the other direction by this 15 degrees. So I go to another half second over here and just say something like minus, I believe it should be 75. So we do have the 105 over here, 90 here, and in the opposite direction over here, like that. If you don't want to see like the other rotations, or you don't want to have the keys of the other rotations, you can just simply, I believe so, get rid of them. Just select them like so. Like for example the X rotation, and just get rid of them. You can also multi-select by hitting Control. So, and the final one, we want to get back to where we come from, so we do copy like the first key over here. I'm gonna copy all the keys, go to the 2 second over there, and when we now press play, we have a little bump in that animation, because the rotation of the tail is not really animating this one completely. So because I believe it is not calculating in all the back end, all the back side areas over here. But let's take a look how that is going to look if we play that. By the way, what you can also do, as always, you can always go into the animator component of the controller and see if the swim animation is going to run. And you can also say how fast you want to test this one out. Before we do anything else, I want to go with my camera next to it so I can also see this in the game view. So I select my camera, go to Game Object, Align with View. So I have a simple and quick way to find my fish and see how it looks if I press play. If I do press play, of course I see everything inside the game view, but also inside the other view. So what you now can see is, without me doing anything else than just rotating the head of the rig, the fish is going to create automatically a nice and smooth swim animation. Again, if I want to speed up this little animation over here, I can go into the animator component of that fish, select the animation, and let's assume we're going to double the speed. In scene view, as well as in the game view, this fish is now procedurally animated completely without me doing too much, but just setting up a rig, selecting all those corresponding constraints. And the final thing is, you can get now into dampening those areas. For example, if you want the tail not to be too much moved and so on, or the rotation of the tail piece, which is going to be like the last area as an example, if you think that is going too much, you can play around with these settings. For example, you don't want to dampen probably the position, but maybe the rotation. Probably you don't really see much of an effect, so just open them all and let's assume we're gonna dampen down everything. As you can see, it will slow down and dampen the animation from the very far, or from the very front end to the back end. It's going to make it a bit more, let's say, stiff, or it's holding it back. If I give it more, it should be more shaky, like more wiggly over the complete size over here. And that's basically everything you need to know about that. Again, position is something else. It's like positioning like in between those positions, I would say. So whenever you play around with these, you always should see, if you do this downwards, it's trying to stay in position. If you give it a bit more, as you can see, it completely freezes it. So the animation does, well, the actual animation. And now we can say, how much do we really want the next bone to be affected by this bone? So we can give it full, which makes it a bit more wiggly and snappy, I would say. But if you play around with this number, somewhere around the 0.5 should be a rather good one, as usual. Again, same one is if we are rotating something back and forth or up and down, but doing this on the head, well, which is currently not working. But if I do rotate the fish up and down, it still keep on going and moving with the current fish itself. and it's also going to squeeze it a bit. So we can also do any other weird things over here. The fish will always do the procedural animation. And that's it. That's everything I wanted to cover in this little tutorial. I hope you enjoyed this one. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask down below in the description. No, not in the description, but in the comments down below. As well as don't forget to thumb up the video if you like it. And yeah, if you have any requests and stuff like that, feel free to send them inside the comment section as well. And that's it. So, thanks a lot for watching. I hope you enjoyed this one, and talk to you next time, I guess. Bye-bye.